Hi, welcome to Future Fast. And like always, we have a very interesting guest today. And before I bring him in, I hope you're enjoying Future Fast. And if you're not yet subscribed to Future Fast, do it right now. And with that, very quickly, I bring in Bipin, Bipin Pradeep Kumar. That's our guest for today. And Bipin is a co-founder of Iom Bioworks, and he's a technology professional who's moved into life sciences. And what is the journey, how and what is what we're going to hear from him today. So, Bipin, welcome to Future Fast, and thank you so much for making time to be here with
Pleasure to be here, Nandana, and thank you for having me on your show. I mean, part of the reason, or the major reason that I'm here is to talk about the work that we're currently doing and how we are setting the stage for certain big breakthroughs is what we imagine. I'm hoping being part of this will help us talk about our story.
Oh, yes. And but before you get to talk about what you're doing, perhaps we start with where you come from. So, if you could share your journey through being a technology professional to technology entrepreneur. I think in the IoT and smart city space, right? You are also involved with the government agencies in that, and then eventually to life sciences. So, please.
Firstly, I mean, it's an honor to be here. I know you have some esteemed guests. I don't think I fit into that category. There's a lot more for me to do than have what has been done in the past, and I hope we will have that opportunity to do so. But I mean, my journey was pretty average in many ways, if I have to say it myself. And before I became an entrepreneur, uh, before I got in with working with technology in the way professionals do. My stint began way back before I became a technology professional. In some sense, it started when I was just in college, when my cousin got the contract to do the Miss World website. This was in 1996 when the Miss World website actually was held in Bengaluru here. And we had a development partner, but I think with the Miss World at that time was mired in financial issues, and some of those things didn't happen. And the development partner kind of backed out. The responsibility to build the website, which fell on my shoulders, and my cousin entrusted me with that, and that, in some sense, was the what would let me getting into computer science in a more deeper way. So I built the entire website, and then we had in 1996 the very first. Soon after the Miss World became a Miss World, post the crowning, an internet-based chat, and I think I built the chat rooms from scratch. All of that was done, and that I don't remember much of how it was done and what was done, but the whole thing went through. We had the Miss World chat, so to say. I learned about ports, and I learned about the entire HTML coding, all of that in a span of, I think, 3 months, 4 months. My cousin passed away, but passed away quite unfortunately. I went back to studying and all that, but this kind of set in place my passion, stoked my passion for certain things, and I knew this is what I wanted to do. This led to other opportunities, and started with my first work after I got out of my college, and I must credit to my earliest bosses, Shalini and Raghu, and Anshu too, for giving me the opportunity again to lead and build one of the first mobile-based WAP portals in that time. I don't know if you recall what WAP was at that time, called Wireless Access Protocol. Yeah, I still remember it, thankfully. Yeah, that was with Tata Cellular, and we had a great team. Mahinder, Srikanth, Pani, to name some of them. And we built very early mobile phone-based tools for programming, and even content for consumption. This eventually then went on to a company called Communication Research Labs, where we built open source. We built some of these large mobile-based SMSCs, MMSCs are short message service centers, these hubs that, when you send messages, it routes messages back and forth. We built these using open source components. Luckily for us, we got a break in setting up, because it was so cheap. When in a typical SMSC, I think cost about a few $1 million. This could be offered at a few hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so most of the third world countries lapped it up. And we piloted this. The first time we went was in Laos. The master system integrators were Chinese. And so all of these things, all of these work projects teach a lot. This was one where the Chinese were the MSIs, and even this group of Indians building these SMSCs and MMSCs and 2-3 other telecom infrastructure products. It's called Loud Telecom, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, these folks loved us more than the Chinese. And the Chinese were hardworking folks, not to say that they weren't. I think from a clear camaraderie, from everything else, and even from professional, the Lao folks loved us and we did a phenomenal job. But despite all that, of course, the major contracts went to the Chinese. So that was a learning in itself in terms of how business deals are done. I think we did project, we did it fast, we did it well. The teams partied with us more than the Chinese. It was actually, I think, about 4 different nationalities were involved in this project. But the Chinese won it all. I don't know whether it was mostly pricing in terms of project planning. We went great in that. We could build something phenomenal. This was early learning. Following that, Ajay came along and he said, "Let's build this mobile first search engine," and we had great fun. We built a search engine tailored for the mobile and leveraged different features on the mobile phone, including knowing the primary network is on your phone, right? I mean, the social network had just come in. What better social network than the one that is there on your phone? We took advantage of all of that. We started this in 2005. We built it for about 4 to 5 years, and I think we built it earlier than Google. Google targeted the mobile. But yes, we built certain things. Then we moved on. Following that is when I joined Reliance Jio as a technology professional, leading the products and platforms teams, and that was learning at another scale. That was mind-boggling scale. I mean, everything we were planning.
This was Jio or the Infocom?
This was Jio.
Okay.
Yeah, this was Jio. And well, when I joined, it was called Infocom, if I'm not mistaken. It was Reliance Infocom. Or Infocom
became communications. Reliance Infocom was started by Mukesh, then became Reliance Communication with ADAG.
The second stage of Mukesh Ambani's stint. This was not Reliance Communications.
Right. Okay.
This was Infocom broadband something. I think my appointment letter was still before it became Jio.
Yeah, I think it was the 3-year-old company which got renamed as Jio. So for 3 years, I think it ran with some other name, and then it was Jio.
Correct. Yeah, I'm forgetting the name on what my initial appointment letter was given on. But that was some learning in terms of how you plan 20 years in advance, the size of what we need to build. Even though I had Ajay, that was a startup. Get done planning, it was all in few millions. Here, the initial thing itself was 100 million, right? And we said, and this 100 million at that time, most telecom networks had a few tens of maybe 10, 20 million people. I mean, if you look at most of the European countries, 50 million was a great number. And then here, Jio was planning for 100 million at minimum, they said. And I think by the time Jio launched, and within 1 year, it was one of the fastest 100 million numbers that it achieved. But full credits to the management team, full credit to Ambani and team, Mr. Ambani and team, and not just for the vision, but him as a leader and his personal attention. I think those are other things that I learned. I mean, how much of attention you need to give yourself, the involvement, personal involvement, and the sheer effort and intelligence. And the team was brilliant in planning, in execution, in taking risks, in having multiple layers of risk absorption, of being able to handle failures. These were all at a different level in Jio, and that was a startup of a different kind. In fact, we were called a startup, and everybody made fun of us, saying, "How can be a $20 billion startup?" But the ethos was that, and clearly, I have a startup now. We have a startup now, and in terms of financial and other muscle power, there's no comparison. But that Jio and the team there led us to building the next company, Gaia, where Sumit, my immediate boss, and me, and actually another senior gentleman, decided to get out after having seen the opportunities and seeing that we built. I think we left a few months just before launch, and everything was almost set, and we knew we had done. We were good at building, and we wanted to continue building and not running something, which is how Reliance looks at stuff. So let's build something else, and we wanted to build a network for things, because we saw the number of connections that things were taking. When I say things, the Internet of Things, all of that. We said let's do that, and that's how Gaia got formed. Cities were the largest consumers of things, in terms by sheer volume, and that's how we said let's call it Gaia Smart Cities. We did a great job with Gaia. And after a while, I think at least I did what I could and wanted to do something else. And said, let's do something in a related space. Gaia had a philosophy, which I think we'll talk about in time. When we created it, in terms of how it was meant to connect so many different things and therefore create an impact. So when you connect different sensors, you can measure stuff, and what that measurement gives you is the capability, if not the power, to impact many other systems that are impacted by what you measure. Just before we started this conversation, Linda, you spoke about sustainability and how plastic, in some sense, probably is the most sustainable of the four things that you outlined, which is glass, paper, steel, and the plastic. When you put in sensors to several things, you can measure them. You can actually measure them in real time and take decisions in real time. That's what we wanted to do, and that's how we said we will translate the Gaia hypothesis in a different way. I took this forward, some of these learning, some of these concepts, some of these philosophies at a different scale, and that was the genesis of Iom Bioworks, and I frankly found two great partners, Samik and Pitano, to set the ball rolling and moving into this space. So that's how we evolved into technology, telecom, and mobile telecom, and smart cities and Internet of Things, and eventually now here in the biotech life sciences space.
All right. Well, just curious, Bipin, I've heard from people who have worked with Mukesh Ambani and how he used to deal with even multiple layers below. He would connect with them one to one. So how was your thing with him? I mean, you used to talk to him, or he used to catch up regularly? How was?
No, we've had meetings. In fact, I've attended one or two meetings where, besides me, there were maybe 4 or 5 others. So he does connect at the level, and for it's in some sense, it's at a personal level. So everybody kind of gets the notion that he or she is the most important at that time, and so it depends on how you handle it. Some of them handle it in a way where they think the world revolves pretty much around them. Some of them handle it in a more sober way. But hats off to them in terms of how it is that, and that's an amazing learning, right? How you reach out and connect to a person in a way that makes the person feel that he's and listen to the person like you need to, right? And some of us, sometimes I make the mistake of, even in a small team, not hearing the team member out. These folks have an innate ability to listen in and say the right things that make you feel connected, and I think they do genuinely too.
Yeah, interesting. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why he's so successful. I've heard from the time when one of my acquaintances was offered a job, and much later we spoke about it, and he eventually went and joined them. And I think he's with that group for over 10, 12 years now. So, and funnily, one other thing I observed is that those guys who join Reliance at a senior level pretty much become unemployable.
Yeah.
Either they have to come out and start their own, or they retire, because I think they pay ridiculously high amounts so that you just don't get another job.
Yeah, these are all intricate details, right? I didn't think I'd be talking about it on a podcast like this. What happens, at least from what I've seen, is there is most people have an innate amount of power, and typically why government folks have power, bureaucrats, ministers all have power, because the sheer size of Reliance and some of the projects that they do, the folks that executed have an amazing amount. Let's just say statistic to power.
Oh, it's just not money. It's the power of influence that they exert in those roles. When they come out, they just can't work for another company because they can't give them that amount of power or influence.
And that's what I told you. I mean, it's also, even when we were doing Jio, you connected to some of the, the top people everywhere else. You connected to the leaders in every field, in every company, and which is great. Which is great because you are doing something great, phenomenal like that. But if you don't take yourself lightly and know that what you're doing is a job and what you're doing is like a job, if you give it any more seriousness than that, then when you get out, it just completely messes with your mind, because you are doing a job, you're given a responsibility, and when that position is taken off you have nothing, you are nothing. So most people collapse internally because of that. They're unable to deal with how the world around them perceives them just as normal now than as as semi-powerful people. I want to use the word godlike, but I think that's taking too much. But most people, fall into that.
Did you have to encounter that kind of a feeling too?
In fact, some of the people that I know still have that. I mean, some people I know very closely. It takes a long while to get off that perch that you're on and say that and believe that you're just an average common man in the end. But I think for me, I mean, I've had my father in the government space, and I've seen over a period of time how the minute you get out of government service, when you have so many facilities or whatever perks around you. When you get out of that in a short span, you're nothing. And thankfully, I think I had that startup thing always in my head that I didn't get burned down by. But yes, I've seen several people who still mythically believe that they are or they're not. It's difficult. It's actually, if you spend too long a time, like 10 years, like some of them do, it becomes absolutely difficult, in my opinion. It could be people who don't. But anyway, that's.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I should probably take it up with somebody who's actively thinking and working on that field, and if they have done some research. But I'm really curious about that. So,
it's a human behavior. I think it's fundamental human behavior over a period of time when you are, given that capability and the responsibility, you can't separate the job from the person, the job from who you are. In some ways it is good, some ways it's not so good. I hope I don't make that mistake.
Yeah, but I thought, at least in India, right, I think this is a very typical Ayn Rand thinking, which a Westerner can get into. But in India, I think we grow up with so many stories of people, right, who are king and then goes on to, I mean, Buddha, right? He was a prince and whose day was met with one day's alms that he collect. And his identity was never the King Siddhartha, it was always Buddha. So likewise, we have a whole lot of people, right, Meera Devi, who was a princess, to here you have in Karnataka we had Purandaradasa and Kanakadasa. Kanakadasa was a chieftain, and Purandaradasa was the richest, wealthiest man who used to lend to the kings at that time.
Please, way better than mine.
So I think as Indians, we would have grown up with so much. So probably it's much easier for Indians to come to terms with the separation of position and power to the reality versus. That's what I always think. Versus those who grow in a ecosystem where they grow up with an Ayn Rand's books and very difficult to connect with other stories. Are the very lack of such narratives from a historical perspective? Perhaps that is.
I think oversimplified it when I said just the identity of the person. Right? It's also the environment in some sense. It is also many things in Jio are at superior level standards, and hats off to them for having set those in place. When you come out and when you have to do either a startup or in a smaller organization, to get to that is not easy. It requires a lot more effort from your side and from the entire environment or the ecosystem side. That is challenging. So some things which you take for granted in a big organization or are just not there in a smaller organization or a startup. That is something also that you're dealing with. So you're dealing with a number of things. You're dealing with so many parameters. And I guess that's what that is what makes it difficult for a person to get out and, like you said, do a job or in some areas. Or
I think in India, I think it was Girdhari Lal Nanda, right? That Prime Minister of India who was found in a rented house and somebody identified him, and it is him, where he was being vacated out of the house for not paying rent, and he was a former Prime Minister of India. I guess we just have a very short post-independence history, but yeah, these stories perhaps are what I think keeps most of us on the ground. But yeah, some people it's very difficult, I guess, and also not everybody gets to play at that level. So if somebody comes from a different background,
It's size and scale. That size and scale is, I mean, not many companies in India and globally reach that size and scale.
correct.
Hats off to them for having done that. That's all.
Right. And do you ever miss having moved out of such a large corporation where you said even failing was okay, acceptable, and you get further support? I mean, that doesn't happen, right? Otherwise,
Yeah, I mean, am I disappointed at having got out of that? No, that was clearly thought through when I said continuing in this. Well, those discussions still happen, on a daily basis in a house, in a household, and in an environment where you're now struggling with finite resources. So those discussions still happen. But I think I'm very now. I think I realized that I like what I do, and I would not have been able to do this if I hadn't, gotten out when I did, in the manner that I did. So yes, I'm absolutely certain that.
And is it you wanted to move out, or it's your former boss? You said was he instrumental, or you also wanted to go and do something?
Oh,
Because
several of us.
it's probably difficult to come out of such big pay and big influence that
Yeah.
your job exhausts, right?
Yeah, I think the pay and all that, sometimes you think you can
Get elsewhere.
get that back. That's it's. But leaving is also fundamental how the ethos of the organization, right? I mean, we were brought in to build something, and we knew, and there is a certain mindset when you're building something, and there is a certain mindset where you need to run it as a business. We were clearly people who built it.
But it's part of a venture's journey also, right? You start something, it's the time you start building, but once you build it, there is a time where you take it to market, monetize it, and build on top of it. So,
and that's a different mindset. And I guess some of us knew that mindset required to do that would be very different from the mindset required to.
See, as a professional, it's okay to think like that. But as an entrepreneur, how do you come to terms with such a thinking where you enjoy building product, but you don't enjoy the other part of it? I mean, how do you make up as an entrepreneur?
So that's putting on my entrepreneur's hat. That is also something we grapple with on a regular basis, and we internally, frankly, my current partners, Samit and Pitano, we've thought through it and said, when the time comes that we know it needs a different level, it needs a different mindset, it needs a different mind share to make it succeed as a business, and the building mindset is not sufficient for that. Then we need to get the right people who have that mindset to take it further. So that is something we have thought through. We've discussed, and I don't know many people who. To scale, you need a different mindset, but to bring it to a particular scale, you need another mindset. Is my view, and that is something I've told the team too.
Right. I'll just step back to talk about your smart city projects that you did, right? I mean, you built a fairly successful venture from that point of view, and but there has always been, or why is it? Why is it that I find, or do you also agree with that the smart city projects as such are one a suspect, two always, or in some sense referred to as a hype, and even as a bubble, because this talk has been on for a long time, right? So, what's your perspective on that? You were there in the thick of much of it. So,
we were. We formed the company a few months before the government announced a smart cities mission. Actually, sometime in 2015, 16 is I think when the smart cities mission came into being. Um, and these cities, forget about smart cities for a minute. We'll come back to it. But cities themselves are complex entities. Cities themselves, if you look at urbanization, and if you look at, say, if you, I think we said the Harappa, Mohenjo-daro were among the earliest urban civilizations. Then, of course, you had the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, all of that. They were all phenomenal civilizations. Right now, it is such a complex entity with so if you were to look at it in the sense that an average city now in Bengaluru is about 10 plus million people, at a minimum. And this is growing to become what I call mega cities. I think I'm digressing. The different departments, each of them in its silos, different administrative machineries. There are the bureaucrats. There is a legislature, which is also an elected body. There is the municipal corporation, another elected body. So you have these different layers of administration and these different departments, which have pretty much had pretty much and continue to be in various silos. And as most departments and such, such nicely architected, when I'm saying nicely architected, I'm being somewhat loose about it. They don't talk to the other, right? There is no communication between one and the other. I mean, you've seen that in many cases in Bengaluru all the time. Somebody comes and digs up the road. See, most cities, somebody comes and digs up the road, then it gets layered, and then right after that, there is another department digging it up. There is water in one place. There is absolutely no water in another. There is road infrastructure. There's so many things which overlap and connect. There is city planning that happens well in one place, perhaps not another. So the smart city mission in that sense had some really good intention. And it's too short a time. I mean, right now is what, 7-8 years since it has come in for an institution like a city to have evolved over 2,000 years at best. 4,500 years, 5,000 years since the Mohenjo-daro time. To expect it to dramatically alter with just the name, with the tag smart, I think is underestimation on our side, and I'm being underestimated. I'm using the word underestimated in a very callous manner. The objective of getting this whole smartness was binding some of these, or get these different departments and administrative machineries together, and use technology to bind them all. So you have all these multiple departments that acted independently. You got all these senior leaders and these departments to come and talk together, create a plan together and say, this is what you want to achieve. Maybe there is one place where you can see all this data. And now that we see this data of how there is things happening, not evenly distributed things, maybe you can plan it better, knowing when some of these activities are supposed to happen. All this, I think, in some sense, happened for the very first time. The underlying thing was, of course, technology, and largely data too. Technology brought in data, and then you could do a lot more data. So the intention was fantastic, and it grows to the way it was executed too. It'll take time. I don't see it as a hype or a bubble. If you look at the number of entities, I mean, if you look at what was intended originally to what is finally getting done because of all the layers in between, what gets executed, I think, is a mere trickle of what actually gets planned. But people have understood how things need to be, how using technology they can, do a better job. it's only going to, it will get better. And this is not just in India, by the way. Nanjana, it's something happening across the globe. Something happening. Sometimes some people, some cities use technology heavily too much, and then they realize there is no use of technology. Maybe you don't need that. Then they bring in city planners and do a better job. So it's just learning. A lot of these different departments, city planners included, architects included, all of them are just testing waters, I would say, at this time. Given another 10, 20 years, and you'll see this accelerating to much more benefit. But to say it is the high.
I don't know, Bipin. See, it's almost 10 years ago. 10 years or I think 2012, which is 11 years ago. I was associated with the Institution of Engineers India here, and I was talking to people and trying to tell them that 15 years from now, Bangalore will die. So technically, we are 4 years away from now. We are 23 and 27. And I was saying that groundwater, right? And Bangalore will die. And
sorry, if you seem to allow this much of that borewell digging, right? I mean, I don't think anybody
correct.
Isn't that much.
Yeah, the amount of groundwater depletion, and I mean, we practically destroyed the water body. They are the sources of it, right? Water bodies have disappeared and buildings have come up there. So I did make that as a complaint, and I also gave a proposition or a solution. And to make, how do you, I mean, I basically believe that anything to be sustained has to be economically viable. If only we make lakes, water bodies as monetizing opportunities, the local corporator will fight to retain it rather than allow it to be, taken over by the builders. If only each water body becomes a hydroport and planes dropping in, going off 500 crore economy, local, every corporator will fight to increase the water body rather than decrease it. So, I mean, see, we've had problems. So if we have to give another 10, 20 years, I think probably we'll have to face the real death situation of cities. Because, we already have issues this year with possibly not having sufficient Kaveri water though it is reaching less than 50% of Bangalore, but we are in a situation where it may not be reaching to even that 50% of population, and groundwater is already in a bad situation. And if the similar trend continues for even just 3 years, the whole thing can change significantly. And in 10 to 20 years, this can be really worse. And just imagine the kind of thing. See, data we've always had. People have always had data of how much of population is located in one locality. See, I'm actually a technology guy. I believe technology is very necessary, but I think what was required is for being able to bring in people who are able to understand data and act upon the existing data than bring technology, because these people know what is the data, they know what is the population. You know how much of a population explosion in terms of density happening here, which is ridiculous, right? Our roads are not able to take it, but they keep giving new plans to build another 1,000 flat. So it's not the data or the technology that can change or save cities. It's the people's greed, which has to be addressed to save. And the whole smart city project became a monetizing opportunity for the greedy. That is where the whole thing came up.
Correct. And this is again when I go back to data in the sense. See, one is Nanjana, there are, more than, the smart city mission was about 100 cities, and I think that's also insufficient for the size and scale that is India. But when you talk about data, possibly 4 or 5 cities in India had that kind of data for that particular city, or for use in pretty much like you said, density planning, water utilization.
No, we had data everywhere because election data was there. You needed the number of voters. Every politician knows exactly how many votes they have. So we had the basic data at least, right?
No, that was a different kind of a data. I don't think it was. It could be data that could be used to plan cities, so to say. Yeah, it is also data that got accepted by these different departments, right? And that was one thing which it did. It democratized the whole piece of saying, I am now making it open enough So in fact, even today, if you look at it, I think there's something called the National Data Sharing and Accessibility Policy, where every government department is supposed to make data available publicly. If you look at it, it's an open portal, and I should look at it. I should keep track of it. There's still so many places yet to publish the data. And if this data gets published, then you can plan better. There are so many, and like you said, this economy piece that you spoke of. If some of this data gets out in terms of orders happening from here, there is a potential for like the hydro ports and whatever else. As it becomes, if you just parking, for example, right? Parking is one of the places, is the areas where most of the money is made in cities. If that gets more and more available in terms of where can they do, how can they do, I think the potential for some of these things, and even creating applications, end users like us, on making it better, environment data that is there. There are so many startups trying to create things saying there is pollution here. There is, imagine if you could make that pollution data out public in a larger way, and give incentives to certain travelers like you and I, saying that this route, this place has already got a road thing, and there's a heavy pollution here. Take another route, and maybe we can incentivize you for that. Incentivize you for it. And this incentivization also needs to be tracked in real time, and therefore give you that that benefit. Maybe now that there is these cards and all of that, these common cards, maybe you could be given a 5 rupee or 10 rupee or whatever into your wallet, which again, thanks to UPI and all that, is available. So these services which enable this cross.
Actually, it's a brilliant business idea what you're talking about. More than the administration way, I think it can be a startup doing it and making money out of it.
Yeah, see, ultimately, economy drives this whole thing, right? Capitalism drives the whole thing. We need ambulances for that matter, right? And an ambulance, in some senses, by one department. If at all we look at from the state, from the healthcare department, the traffic lights from what is that? Probably police or some other department. And if you had to actually enable a seamless route for the ambulance, it needs to have data and APIs. Anyway, this is what the technologists can be talking. You're absolutely right. If citizens don't see some of these things and act on, so as much as there are smart cities, you need smart citizens across the board. But these are early days. So to say, we'll get there. That's the optimist in me talking, and I have enough reason to believe in that optimism.
No, I think I actually believe that every entrepreneur foremost has to be an optimist. Otherwise, you just can't be an entrepreneur. So.
That's also true. So that could be a bias in me already.
Right. Well, I put myself also in the same shoes. I as much as I like to say that there is a threat, I also see it can be addressed in so many ways. So that's where I try to see if we can find a solution. But the problem is to getting to work towards the solution. But you've been also a member of and also chaired panels across task force with government agencies, academia, industry, and how do you see the challenges in these efforts? How do you navigate to get something meaningful coming out of it when people or the so-called stakeholders come from different domains, right? There is nobody who actually owns it or has a influence, unlike what you did, say, in Reliance, where there is an organizational agenda and you just go full out. But when you work on these kind of task forces, how do you make things happen?
There's this Indian mythological thing of the whole churning of the ocean and this
Amrit Manthan.
Nectar coming out.
Yeah.
It is in that sense. It is. You need to get in and do some things. Pretty much like how Wikipedia, came about. When you have many people contributing.
No, but that was more a volunteer effort, right? But here, academia, administration, government agencies, and also private large enterprise players. So each one have their own agendas here, right? And when you
Still,
chair a panel like that, how do you? These are not volunteers who just have a
no,
goodness
no.
happening, right?
I think that personal agenda is extremely important to I mean, to give it a completely counter approach. That if you don't have that personal agenda, it is like Adam Smith's, what is that? The hand, the invisible hand.
Invisible hand, yeah.
If you don't have personal agendas in a institution like this, in one of these task forces or these collaborative efforts, it won't succeed. It is everybody's personal effort that gets bought in by somebody else, and somebody else realizing the potential of that agenda, of that person's personal agenda, and seeing how that can be made better, and giving and taking of these different personal agendas that actually make it successful. If you don't come with a personal agenda, I can tell you that you will fail in something like this.
Oh, well, if personal agenda is only with the intention is that something good to come out is great, but a lot of times personal agenda is that it has to be my institution's ownership or driving or
So
so.
that's the extreme, right? I mean, things like that also happen. I mean, so those are unreasonable personal agendas. Personal agendas with enough rational and reasonable and that are reasonable kind of get bought in.
Or sometimes they are there because they have been asked to be there.
That also happens. That also happens.
So how do you navigate those things?
Yeah, all of that happens, Narjunda, and it is somehow like the chaos that is India. When you have an external when a person from overseas come in and see the roads here and say, "Wow, how does somebody even move in something like this?" But that chaos has a way in which things shape themselves out, and the ones that do get shaped are the ones that move forward, and the ones that do not, met with resistance, or like you say, can't be justified enough, or it's purely personal. It doesn't have anything for the larger community. It doesn't have something for what gets. I encounter the words nation building and all of that in some of these. But people have an uncanny ability uh, to see what adds value and work towards it. Um, and I think it's a belief in people's um, it's a belief in people and their ideas, and how that can benefit both India and at a larger level the globe, that drives some of these pieces. And of course, see, most of these, as much as you say it is industry, academia, government, private, some of these are helmed in either by an industry organization, industry body, or by the government. And fortunately, or unfortunately, both of these that I worked in, or I led or co-led, were government supported. And it's for the first time when I got into this, I must say that the sheer passion and the drive and the work ethic of some of the government folks completely shocked me. I mean, there are people who really are out to get to creating something for the benefit of the country, of the larger community of the country, of for people. Um, and India has several of them. India has several of them. I mean, the whole thing of a corrupt bureaucracy, a corrupt government official, um, which is what we typically have, right? I mean, um, that kind of melted away. It was diffused. So that, in some sense, that was a shock to me. Or the work ethics of some of the government folks.
Well, incidentally, we had a guest, Giri Balasubramaniam. So, for the audience and listeners who have not looked up his podcast, please do. In fact, he's better known as Pick Brain, the quiz master. Uh, he also took up a role with government agency, and I was asking him how is it, and he actually was telling me something similar, that he was also it was a mind opening exercise of sorts. to understand that there are people so committed. And he actually took up this. I think the government opens up this joint secretary kind of a function for private individuals. So he took up one such.
Lateral entry was called.
Lateral entry, yeah. So he did that role, and then he was saying that, see, I just wanted to do something rather than sit in the fence and comment. So I went in and I saw, and it was. I really urge people to do that and all that. But he had the similar sentiments about some of the government officials who their work ethic and the way they're. And he was saying that calling on a Sunday evening and sitting through till 9:30, 10 o'clock in the night in the office talking about projects. So you're saying that, which is not, I mean, nobody will raise an eyebrow if it is happening in a company because that is expected to be. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you do that. But he was saying that the similar thing he saw in the government office, and which, so somewhere it kind of gives some hope to the.
Yeah, I've had government officials, senior folks, directors general, deputies, and directors general level, who are with you and reviewing documents till like 9, 10 in the night, and then you know that you're deliver it by 7 a.m., 8 a.m. in the morning, and you would think initially that, hey, it's 7 a.m. Not that you're going to call, and 7 a.m. you'd get a call from this person personally and say, has it been done? Can you send it to me? I'd like to review it. And that has happened on multiple occasions. It's happened on multiple occasions, and that motivates you even further. That motivates you and the team even further to deliver, to do stuff. And I hope some of these folks get their due in the right way. That is, in the right way. So yes, so some of these task forces, etc., have been amazing. What prevents some of them from what I've seen is, most of these things have a retroactive, which is temporal. When you look at consequences in unseen time and in unseen areas, because these are massive efforts, right? And in an area that you may not have conceived, it is touched and possibly touched in a negative way. And these maybe third order, fourth order consequences, unforeseen ones, and the role that and the impact that it has negatively are the ones that worry some of them. And then they go slow. And the very active ones hesitate to take certain actions and decisions because of this. But when done correctly, Nanjenda, I mean, and this is where it's not just India, right? India has so much potential, and it's still so underutilized. I mean, we were there, we saw, for example, standards and how standards are used obviously as weapons to shape certain directions of how industry moves. The number of standards that come out of China, and if you compare India, it's a metrical. So you need many more such efforts. Number one. You need many more such institutions, government officials to lead at the global stage. And we do have some of them. They need to be empowered. More of these efforts, these collaborative efforts, and the industry needs to participate. And in this, if you have an agenda, it's great, because even in China and all that, it's private players that create or create these ideas that eventually get taken around and put it on an international stage. So India has support. India has support, and not in the most geopolitically friendly way, but geopolitically, because of how India is perceived among the West and Europeans and several others actually, and the rising threat that most people see from China. India has some phenomenal support, but we don't have the manpower and the team to do some of these things. We should. I mean, we should leverage every bit of this, and I think more needs to be done in some of these, like the task forces and these collaborative efforts. Much more needs to be done. Much more, actually, not just much more. Much more needs to be done.
Well, Bipin, how do you balance your personal goals, your professional entrepreneurial goals, with some of these larger impactful uh, thought process from a point of impacting a larger society and all? How do you balance it out?
I don't think there's a balance, Najunda.
So how do
Now,
you try to put things together to work with?
yeah, and you need a great team if you have to do it. You need a great team. Now, being a full-time entrepreneur, the organization, the startup takes precedence, paying salaries, creating a value for the shareholders, creating value for the people who believed in you. That takes precedence over everything else. And it's only once that is established and that is set, can some of these other things um, take priority. So I don't think there's a balance. There is priorities, and you need to set your priorities. That this is what I want to do now. This is what I want to do for some time, and post this. Then I can. For me, at this stage, to say that I should do stuff for the larger good as much as I want to, I know I cannot. I don't think I can. 2-3 years from now, when this is running well, which is ideally, frankly, my earlier thing, we had the team, and I could focus on certain areas. I could focus on some larger objectives, and some others focused on the more tangible pieces, here and now kinds of delivery. You need people to support you. And I don't think it's a balance. You can't do it all together. I mean, you have to be some kind of superhuman to do all of it together. Unfortunately, I'm not. I think I've realized that you need to prioritize what you need to do. You can only be good in some things. You can't be good in everything. And while you're good in something, you also need to know what you need to be, what you can afford to be bad in, and focus on the good. I think these are things that you will work out. And eventually, you know that you can do some of these things later. That's a good place to be.
So, Bipin, if you have to talk about the people who have influenced you to be the person that you are today,
it's a tricky question. A really tricky question, and I think so many people. I mean, on a continuous basis, I'm impressed and learning from people. I'm being shaped organically and inorganically. Right from my parents, right? I mean, to be very honest, I was very casual about my relationship with my parents, and mostly dismissed my parents in my youth. But when you look at some of the things that my mother and father do now, and how they handle things, and my mother's nonstop energy and curiosity to doing new things, even at this age, I see some of them reflected in me, and I know that those things have shaped me. I still don't have her energy levels. Then there's my wife. I mean, I think an absolutely silent contributor. She gives me the space, knows when to butt in, support me, and when to leave me alone. Plus, doing startups are not easy on the mental and financial health of a family. So she's been there to give me that steady platform. Patience, my sister's patience. My sister and I have an autistic nephew, and just how my sister handles in the patience that she has to see things for little beyond the horizon. That astounds me. And my cousins, I have some amazing cousins. Their resilience at what life has thrown them, all of that has been, I think, shaped me in some way. And they're younger than me in many ways. I see my son handling things, and that has shaped how I handle people. I mean, it's truly, I think what they say, the child is the father of man. Is a statement I don't know who made it. It's pretty true. Then my teams, I've been very fortunate with great teams. As in the past, phenomenal teams, my industry found all of them at different stages. And right now, I have an amazing team. They constantly shape me on a day-to-day basis. They shape me and reshape me. Samik is an amazing partner to have. He knows how to handle his areas like a silent process visionary. He takes his calls, whatever. The high intellectual standards that he sets urges the team to new areas. And even me, I mean, I'm remarkably uh, shaped by his thinking. Renuka, Nisha, Tanmay, Kishore, Sarvesh, I think they're all youngsters, some of them. The way they think, the way they, I think not just shape, they tone me up on a daily basis. My childhood friends, Prashant, Sunil, who came with me. I mean, we took part in computer programming competitions in 1990, 91. My cousin Shailun, who passed away, this was a gentleman who got that the work contract. He saw some potential and stoked my interest in computers and programming. My earliest bosses, Shalini and Raghu, who taught me to be humble and handle challenges with dignity, to forge deeper relationships. Another colleague, partner, Ajay, who's still an advisor with us, and he taught me to look at the challenges a startup encounters so very differently and how he solves for it. So with initially my boss and my partner, we have had our disagreements, but we created beautiful things. And his energy levels and his width of things is crazy. All these I constantly try to be, and I don't think I do. Another friend, Pollyanna, who saw potential and gave me opportunities. Mendel's P's. P is amazing. I mean, that was an introduction to genetics and evolution. So yes, I think different things, different people, I kind of shaped what I do and how I do. And I think these are the ones that come to the top of my head. I'm sure there are many more.
Yeah, I think it's always difficult to recall because most times it is those we are regularly in touch, and also some events that change the very way we think. We actually forget at a fundamental level something happens.
They touch you at a fundamental level in ways that completely change you. And in the life of an entrepreneur, it happens way more than we think. I mean, small things are just teach you so much.
Right. And I think time and again we also get into this kind of a loop in the way we react to things. And many a time, at least in my case, I needed a friend to point it out to me that it looks like you're in a loop. And till he pointed it out, it never occurred to me. And I always thought I'm doing something differently or reacting something differently. And which seemed so, but till I pulled myself out and saw it in a perspective which made it clear that my reactions were exactly the same. So, have you found yourself in a situation like that? Is there somebody who pointed it out to you, or you've always been conscious so you don't get yourself into a loop?
Like I said, I'm surrounded by people who are really quick to point out to me in absolute no nonsensical terms, saying that I'm doing crap, or and fortunately, I've learned to listen to them. So one thing is to have people tell you, to recognize who are the people you need to listen to. I have quite a few of them. Like I said, my immediate family and my team, they tell me straight to my face saying that, there's nothing like an order, which is, in some sense, I think it's too much of democracy and too much of thought process among different people too. But yeah, it is up to us as people, as leaders, in whatever way to listen to them and factor it, incorporate them where possible, and know which ones to do and which ones not to. I think that's also critical. But we make mistakes all the time. True. I think the trick is to make lesser mistakes by sheer volume and have a few successes that will override some of those mistakes.
Yeah. So what I realized was that I was making similar mistake, thinking I'm doing something different, and realized that they actually are very same, but I'm doing it differently, but the same mistake. So that's where I've been really curious to find what do others do. So uh, so uh, Bipin, what kind of books or podcasts do you follow? What kind of books do you read? Something you can share with or recommend for our listeners and audience, and even
Most recently, mm, I've been reading The Code Breaker. It's in my domain. It's a story of gene editing. It's supposed to be the biography of Jennifer Doudna, but the author Walter Isaacson does a really good job of bringing in most people around this topic. I like that, just in terms of the sheer humanity. And this is another thing now we're in the academics, in a semi-research space, right? Very different from a purely tech-led development, etc. And there's so much competition even here that I do think if there was more collaboration, it could do greater service to mankind. I've seen even in the various ones that we know works happening. Um, we refuse. I mean, there is refusal to share information. I don't know why. I mean, eventually, some of these things get published. Data is made public. It's released out. But while it is getting done, there's so much of secrecy, and this is shown in that book. I mean, in terms of how and why there's such a big commercial aspect to it that it's part of it, and that was good learning for me. From a I'm a big Isaac Asimov fan, and I think I have one of the largest collections of Isaac Asimov books. But a young child, or not a new Chinese author, Cixin Liu, his trilogy called the Three Body Problem, which is the three body problem, the Dark Forest. That's a leap in science fiction, I think. That's if I were to recommend somebody to read some science fiction books to see to reimagine how the universe could play a role, I would recommend Cixin Liu, a Chinese author. Phenomenal. Podcasts, I have to listen to yours, Nanjunda. I might stand up now. But a good friend, introduced me to the BBC podcast, and I'm amazed at the sheer variety and depth of research and topics, brief lectures, things like that. I mean, that in many ways also has shaped me, by the way. Just listening to Descartes' life and I mean all these Adam Smith things and all that. When I run or walk, I just listen to it. Yeah, I think podcasts are super. Yeah, so books, podcasts. Another book is on evolutionary biology. The Devil's Chaplain, it's called, by Richard Dawkins. That I think gave me a good step into what I wanted to do, and kind of laid the foundations of how I want to build Iom together with the team and Sonic and Kitano. It just laid bare evolution's.
which book?
It's called the Devil's Chaplain.
Devil's Chaplain.
There is no, I mean, there is cruelty, there is beauty, all of that. Nature's just indifferent in many ways. Was some of the thinking. Another person I really like, and I would say shaped so much without knowing, is a lady called Lynn Margulis. She, in fact, together with this other gentleman, created the Gaia hypothesis. I'm forgetting the name. But Lynn's thinking, effort, work has deep implications on how Iom is shaped. In fact, she's the one who also brought about the theory of how bacteria is shaped Earth. Bacteria shaped us as individual beings. I mean, they were the earliest living beings on the.
Which book?
Many books by Lynn Margulis. Margulis, I think that's what it is. The book that I'm talking about in particular is called Microcosmos.
Okay.
There's another book called Terra Ignota. Yeah, Lynn Margulis. I thought it was Margulis, but Lynn Margulis. Yep, these are some of the books that I just can't get enough of. Well, and in some sense, I think shaped me where I am. I like the Gaia hypothesis. I like the whole microcosmos piece. She happened to be the first wife of Carl Sagan, and when he wrote Cosmos, and he and his son then went on to create the whole microscopic universe, and therefore the microcosmos, the name.
Okay.
So she talks about how bacteria have evolved us. In fact, we have evolved. We'll talk about that, I think, in another time.
Sure. Yeah, I think great recommendations, Bipin. Thank you. And I've not come across her at all, so I think I'm going to dive into them. Thank you so much. And wonderful. So to the audience and listeners, you have the links below this podcast. You can follow the kind of work. And most important thing is that what and how of that work is what we're going to talk next. So you've got to come back soon. And before we do that, please go ahead, share this podcast with all those you think will appreciate something like this. And if you're not yet subscribed to Future Fast, do it right now. Bipin, once again, thank you so much for being with us at Future Fast.
Thank you, Nunjana. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.